Welcome gallery staff and councillors to the Richmond Valley's Ordinary Council meeting, Tuesday the 21st of September 2021. Got a bit of an echo. I'll open the meeting with the acknowledgement of country. Richmond Valley Council recognises the people of the Bundjalung Nations as custodians and traditional owners of this land, and we value and appreciate the continuing cultural connections to lands, the living culture and the unique role in the life of this region in the past, present and future. Mr General Manager, could you read the prayer, please?
Dear Lord, we meet to serve our community, to use our resources wisely and well, to represent all members of our community fairly, to make decisions that promote the common good. We recognise our responsibility to the past and the future, and the rights and needs of both individuals and community. As trusted servants, we seek blessings on our deliberations and on our efforts here today. May we act wisely and well. Amen.
Amen. Item 3, public access and question time. We have 2 requests today. The first one is Mr Ben Fisher, who is requested to address the meeting in relation to item 10.1, notice of motion by Councillor Simpson, Evans Head Ambulance Station. You there, Mr Fisher?
Thanks, good evening.
Welcome, and when you're ready to start, it's a 5-minute time limit. At 4 minutes you'll get a bell if you need it. Other than that, up to you when you want to start, and yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much. I guess I'm speaking to the letter I sent Councillors Hay and Simpson, and I thank them for submitting it. In a summary, basically, the ambulance response times at Evans Head have deteriorated over the last 2 years. Prior to 2019, Evans Head was staffed with 4 to 5 permanent officers, and the working roster was that they were on roster each day for about 11 hours, and then they were taking their vehicles, their ambulances home with them at night. allergic reaction, and I've been called out to do CPR on people. But I'm getting a lot of plenty in the community from businesses, from the clubs, from the elderly community here, and people cannot understand why they're getting ambulances from Lismore or Casino or Byron Bay when they know that there's been a staff increase at Everton. So that's it in a nutshell. So I hope I've taken my 5 minutes up. There is documentation with some snapshots of some of the jobs that have happened and the times that they've happened. I think have been submitted as part of the meeting. You know, for instance, you know, we lose a crew out of Devon because someone had gastro at the claim and they needed a bed and they transported them to Lismore. And it's just an inappropriate use of those resources. But paramedics at Everton, they're highly trained, they're university educated. They are the only one, you know, protection that this community has. And it's got to the point where we really need to pull out all stops to try and find a way for the tasking of these crews and make sure that there are crews that are in town when they're needed. And of course, there are times, you know, when we do genuine emergencies, we're not going to be in town. That's already an issue. That's already been recognised by ambulance. And so any further taking of resources out of town really is already has caused near misses and is undoubtedly going to cause a tragic event to families in this community.
Thank you. Would you take questions if any councillor got a question, Mr. Fisher? Councillor Simpson.
Ben, have you raised this issue directly with our state member?
Any other questions? Well, thank you, Ben, for your presentation, and I'm sure that the notice of motion will get good support. I'd like to wish you a trip home, but it looks like you're already at home on Zoom, so...
Yeah, I was on my way out. I had my work takes me around different areas, and it was seen as probably a better idea that I stay home and keep you all safe, despite my vaccination being double dosed anyway.
Thanks very much.
I'd like to thank Councillor Simpson and councillors for listening, and thank you very much again. Cheers.
Thank you. Councillors, no, we've still got the echo. I thought it might have gone when the Zoom went. Next request is from Ms Liz Stops, and is requested to address the meeting regarding item 17.1, North Coast Alternative Waste Solutions Project Update and New South Wales Energy from Waste Infrastructure Plan. And she will also follow up some questions on the same item.
Thank you for accepting my late application.
We're just going to wait a minute to see if we can fix
What's
it.
that, sorry?
Can we just...
Oh, radio.
Yeah, we'll just... No, that's not working.
Is that any better? Eh? Is it working or not working? Okay. Right.
Sorry, just... We're live streaming? Yeah. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Stopps, and you're on item 17.1, and you'll know the regulations and rules. You've been here before, so welcome, and when you're ready, feel free to start.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for accepting my late application for public access. The possibility of an incinerator being commissioned for the Richmond Valley first came to my notice when a trip to Japan by various members of council to look at facilities there was reported at the general meeting in March 2019. At the April 2019, I asked some questions about the incineration process. Following this, in 2020, I had the opportunity to attend a webinar on waste incineration that was hosted by the National Toxics Network. The speakers were all highly qualified experts in the field, and their findings have all been peer-reviewed and published in reputable journals. Their conclusions and the implications for long-term financial and environmental damage to broad areas surrounding the site of an incinerator were extremely alarming. There's not time in 5 minutes of public access to detail everything I learned, but I'd like to share some pertinent information. Incineration is part of linear technology where the end product of a production cycle is waste. What we should be aiming for is circular technology where the end product of one cycle of production feeds into the next production cycle. There was an article in EcoNet Daily yesterday that told the story of a Northern Rivers resident, Brendan Lowe, who initiated a business producing underwear made out of fabric derived from polyethylene terephthalate, PET, the stuff that drink bottles are made from. He found that you can recycle PET into high-performance fibre in synthetic that performs better than a natural fibre for this purpose. He says natural fibres absorb moisture. For underwear, you don't want that. You actually want them to breathe and to release moisture. This is an example of an innovative solution to a persistent waste problem. 3 to 4 times more energy can be saved by a combination of reuse, recycling and composting compared to incineration. Redirecting the embodied energy in PET bottles made further use of the fossil fuels from which the PET is derived and avoided consuming the energy required to grow and process cotton. No matter how efficient an incinerator is, it will still be a source of unintentional persistent organic pollutants, or UPOPs. Nanoparticles come into this category and are so small they're not efficiently captured by air pollution control devices. They can travel long distances and penetrate deep into the lungs. Nanoparticles from incinerators contain many harmful substances, including dioxins. Although the GM's report states that dioxins will be reduced in a facility built here, any quantity of dioxin is extremely toxic and lasts for generations. Japan is cited as a best practice leader, but Japan emits 40% of the global dioxin pollution and has the highest level of dioxins in the population and in the environment. Amongst other things, dioxins have been linked to cancer, diabetes and developmental problems such as endocrine disruption. One of the conclusions of a 2019 Australian Public Health Expert Global Incineration Study was that contamination of food and ingestion of pollutants is a significant risk pathway for both nearby and distant residents. Rather than being an up-and-coming technology, many places overseas are phasing out incineration as emissions have proved so polluting, and plans to incorporate ash residue and concrete have proved to be economically unviable, leading to the accumulation of slag heaps that are extremely toxic and will remain so for generations, potentially leaching toxins into surrounding land and waterways. This is just a fraction of the information I learned by attending the previously mentioned webinar and reading items published by the National Toxics Network. Part of RVC's environmental charter states that council shall exercise due consideration for environmental impacts when planning council works. I'm sure that council wants what is best for the community, and I'm asking you to seek input from scientists who know the chemistry, have studied existing facilities and are aware of the pitfalls and dangers of incineration. There may be more long-term jobs created for the Northern Rivers by promoting innovation in reuse and recycling and developing a circular economy. And the health of Richmond Valley residents, the air we breathe, and our environment would be better protected. Thank you.
Thank you. Has any councillors got any questions? I trust that you'll take some.
Sure.
Any councillors?
That webinar that you mentioned, would that be publicly available for anybody else who wanted to view it, or would you be able, or if somebody wanted further detail, would you be able to provide that, please?
After the webinar, the participants were given a link to the PowerPoint presentations, and I downloaded those, so if anyone is interested in those, I can forward them. Okay.
Any other questions? I believe you have some questions.
I do.
You'd like to go ahead and ask them, please?
I'm wondering why there's been no community consultation to date re the proposed incinerator project at the Reynolds Road precinct, and when does council intend to allow community input into this project?
Did you want to take them all? Or
Do you want me to ask them all? And
No, we might as well just do them as we go. Are you happy with that?
I'm happy either way.
Because I've got some, we just prepared some answers, obviously in anticipation of these. So to respond to your first question, and I think, as you mentioned, we've been looking into this since, well, at least March 2019, when that report was brought to council. I suppose, firstly, the word incinerator isn't quite accurate. The way they are today, they're actually high-tech thermal waste facilities. And I think incinerators used, I suppose, to play on our memories of what used to be in backyards many years ago. But these facilities, they do treat waste and at very high temperatures, and have sophisticated technology to ensure that any emissions released comply with the required standards. So council's been investigating a wide range of waste management solutions, and we've been doing that and communicating to our community, back to 2019 and beyond. Obviously, we've got a waste strategy and other work that's happening, and obviously more recently it's the North Coast Waste Investment report that was done. The government announcement that's obviously prompted the need for a report to update council identifies that energy from waste facilities can happen here. Doesn't necessarily mean they will, but they can happen here, Goulburn, Lithgow and Parkes. But for that to happen, they will be required to go through the usual development planning processes, including environmental impact studies, which will obviously include further opportunities for community consultation and feedback as any development does. So we have identified that there's clearly a need for more information on how these facilities work, and we'll certainly be looking to provide that as we look at waste in general. And I think to touch on the webinar, and you mentioned they've been peer reviewed and other things, well, certainly the EPA's advice, which EPA obviously have announced the Energy from Waste Infrastructure Plan. It is based on and includes advice from the Chief Scientist. So that's all being taken into account. High standards are being set so that if these facilities do happen in New South Wales, we are achieving those outcomes that we all seek for our community.
Question 2.
Should the, I'll keep saying incinerator because
That's all right.
Incinerator be built, what contracts would RVC be locked into, and what penalties would RVC be subject to should volume fall below the contracted amount?
So it's a good question. If there is I suppose first point to make though is that if a facility is proposed and to be constructed, they're done so and managed by private enterprise. We don't intend to manage a facility ourselves. We would and other councils would enter into or choose to enter into service contracts for amounts of these residual wastes that go into these facilities. That's certainly something that, if this moves forward, we will negotiate on. And obviously at the end of the day, our aim is to improve or reduce, I suppose, the cost to ratepayers of our residual waste. We've been working with the other councils along the North Coast to find a solution for the North Coast region, and that work goes back more than 29, and it goes back to 2013, 14. There's been a lot of work done in this region to try and find solutions to our waste challenges. So it is early days. We're looking at a solution for the North Coast region. I think it's an important point to make that at this stage, that's what our discussions are focused on. We're certainly not, and I've seen in recent some social media around it's going to take toxic waste from Sydney. That hasn't been any part of any discussions that we've been involved in.
Question 3.
Is Rvc aware that there have been over 50 accidents with similar projects across Europe causing extremely polluting events?
So probably the first point, we've certainly undertaken significant investigations into energy from waste facilities, looked at them across the globe, and obviously, as you mentioned, we visited some of the facilities in Japan as part of a study tour back in 2019. I'm certainly not aware of those accidents that you've claimed. We've certainly seen some well-run and managed facilities, which, we're certainly obviously interested in only those ones. That's not to say that there aren't issues. There's thousands of these, so when you've got a lot of these things in other countries, standards and requirements can be different. But we do know that the EPA requirements for these facilities will be up there with the strictest, in the world, and any facility that happens will need to comply with that. I think it's useful to also have a look at where these things are successful, and at the moment there is one being, it's under construction in Kwinana near Perth in Western Australia, and there's some good information on that project on a website that you can get very quickly by Googling Avertas, and that's Avertas, and there's some good information on that as that facility is built.
Question 4.
Has Rvc compared the number of long-term jobs gained running an incinerator to either cool waste to energy technology such as anaerobic digesters or recycling ventures?
So as I've touched on, we're an open book on all solutions for all of our waste streams. Our region at the moment has a waste diversion rate of around 57%, which is actually well above the state average of about 42%. So, the Northern Rivers does well when it comes to waste diversion. At the moment, what's left, so on average the 43%, in our case we are, and a number of the councils in the Northern Rivers, is transporting that waste to a facility in Queensland. We'll continue to do that while we commence construction of a new landfill cell at our Namoona site to the north of Casino. We're big supporters of a circular economy, and as the New South Wales Government's plans, the Waste and Sustainable Resource Materials plan, we need solutions for landfill, and that plan actually includes energy from waste as an option. So our interest in this isn't really focused on jobs, but I'm sure that as we get some new industries, and if we can get some circular economy industries into our area, then there will be the benefit of jobs. So this is not being driven just to get jobs and economic development. This is also about getting some solutions to our waste challenges that are, good for our environment, but good for our economy as well.
Question 5.
Has Council looked into the impacts of incinerator emissions on the beef and dairy industries and on our clean green image?
Look, as I've said, for this facility to occur, it would need to meet EPA's strict standards. We have looked into this. The North Coast Waste Investment Report, which is available on the Regional New South Wales website, includes a section around greenhouse gas emissions and those outcomes. The EPA's got an energy from waste policy statement, an infrastructure plan, and these facilities are required to have live data available on any emissions that's available to the public, and they will need to meet, Australian but also international emissions standards. So I think probably an important point to make is that we also need to think about what we're currently doing with some of this waste. It's going into holes in the ground. It's generating methane. It's a lot of these facilities are legacy facilities from some time. They generate leachate, which pollutes our waterways. And these landfill sites leave legacy management issues for councils everywhere. So I think it's really important that we not only look at what these facilities can do, but we also got to think about what we currently do, and putting waste into the ground isn't a long-term sustainable solution either. So it's about weighing up our options. At the end of the day, unfortunately, there will always be some waste generated by us. As much as we might try to, avoid or reuse or recycle, we've still got, as we say, we've still got 43% of the waste to do something with, and at the moment, a lot of it's just going to landfills. So our aim is to try and get some improved outcomes, and but at this stage, I think it's an important point to make. These facilities aren't approved. There's a process that they will have to go through.
Question 6.
Could RVC list the 12 councils that were originally part of the investigative group, and also the 3 councils that have left the group?
Yeah, so the focus of this work, which has actually been led by Richmond Valley Council in partnership also with Regional New South Wales, who's supported it with funding, working with the councils from the Tweed right through to Mid-Coast Council. So down the coast, those 13 councils from Tweed down to Mid-Coast Council. The focus of that work has been to understand how we all manage our waste, what the volumes of waste are that are generated, the infrastructure that's available to deal with that waste, the available space in landfills. So that report has a lot of useful information, a lot of data to inform decision making. That's the whole basis of it. So all those councils remain except Mid-Coast, Port Macquarie, Bellingen and Nambucca. So we have 9 councils continuing to participate in this process really. We're working through what are the options, and we're currently preparing a market testing process for alternate waste treatment solutions. So I think it's an important point to make that we're looking at not only what we can do with landfill waste, but also what are the opportunities from recyclables. We are quite good at dealing with our green waste and food organics. There's a number of facilities in our region that are dealing with composting and those things. So the focus is to try and get some solutions to recyclables and landfill waste. I think another important point to make is that none of the councils who are continuing in the group have committed to anything at this stage. It is investigation work with a good aim of just getting some better outcomes for our communities on waste. And I think just to wrap up, any projects, as I've said, will need to go through a development approval process that will require public consultation. So we're not doing anything or making any decisions without giving people like yourself and people in the community the opportunity to be informed and have a say. They'll obviously need to meet stringent environmental guidelines, and as we move forward, we'll continue to keep the community informed, as we've done by having this information item for tonight's meeting. So thanks for the questions and the opportunity to give some information on that.
Thank you for taking the time to answer them comprehensively.
Thank you very much, and have a safe trip home. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is apologies, and I have a from Councillor Cornish said he would be a little bit late, so we'll take it that he will have come later. Councillors, you will have in front of you a late item of the mayoral minute, item 5. This is late because it's due to a recent government announcement. It refers to the New South Wales Shark Management Program. It's just been updated. And I'd like to move that recommendation on page 3 of that report, if I can get a seconder, please.
Yeah, second.
Councillor Hayes. Councillors, everyone in the room would most probably aware that this has just been recently announced, as I said, and it's good to see that extra money has been thrown into this program. We were earlier in the stage was like a trial in our area, and it's good to see that now it's going right up down the coast. So I think it will put a lot of our community's minds at ease in coming swimming seasons coming into the summer, and anything we can do to help the Evans Head businesses and the community down there to try to recover and attract people to that area, it'll be a great benefit to them. So I don't know if anyone else would like to speak to it. Okay, no discussion then. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Page 6, 6.1. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 17th of August. Could I get a mover, please?
Moved.
Councillor Simpson, seconder. Councillor Morrissey. Everyone happy with those minutes? Put that motion in. All those in favour? Page 7. Matters arising out of the minutes. Has any councillor got any matters?
Yeah, I've got one. Item number 19 in the minutes was a question for next meeting in writing from Councillor Musto. I'm just wondering if there's been any change in that testing regime for the testing of the sewage treatment works since we've had that small outbreak last week. Has that changed what we do? Are we going to test the other sewage plants, as in Coracai and Evans Head?
Page 19.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So what we currently have is we have weekly testing, and we do have Casino, Coracai and Evans Head getting tested weekly. So that's a little bit of an update of what we were doing previously.
How long does it take to get the results back?
Depends how busy the lab in Sydney is. We tend to get our results back within about 3 to 4 days at this point in time. So the samples are taken on a Wednesday at this point. Some days, those days do change, but it's generally midweek, and we usually have those results back sometime late Friday or Saturday morning.
With the situation when people are travelling through and they use the dump points for for their caravan cassettes and that, we've got no way of separating them from the sewage. They just go straight in. We can't hold them back, can we?
That's correct. There are some, the science isn't perfect because we do have outside influences that we cannot control. However, we have recently looked at, with our other neighbouring councils, restricting contractors who go and do effluent pump outs to our rural areas. So we're only going to be accepting effluent from the Richmond Valley going into our sewage treatment plant, and that's the same as our neighbours in Kyogle, Ballina and Lismore. So then we can possibly rule out that as a potential source of detection. So we've made that decision in the last couple of days. But yeah, the dump points with travellers coming through, we've got absolutely no control over that. It is something that we're aware of though.
Where do the aeroplanes dump that come into Belmar? They do it in Sydney. Well, it's a fair question.
I think it was a human, wasn't it? It was the human, wasn't it?
Any other matters arising? I'll move on. No other matters? Item 8, declaration of interests. Any councillors? Do you have any submitted, Mr. General Manager?
No, none received.
Petitions, item 9, there's no petitions. Page 8, item 10.1, notice of motion submitted by Councillor Simpson. Councillor Simpson.
I'll move that motion.
Yeah, second.
So firstly, I'd like to thank Ben Fisher for taking the time to address Council on this issue. For those of you who don't know Ben, he's a long-time paramedic and Evans Head local. He is concerned, and rightly so, that non-urgent transfers, the real issue here is the non-urgent transfers of patients. The paramedics in Evans Head have absolutely no issue attending to out-of-area emergencies. That's certainly not the problem. The problem is where they're called to do, like the example he gave, where someone has gastro and they're taking the ambulance from Evans Head to Maclean to move them to Lismore, taking them out of the area for 2 to 3 hours at a time. And Evans Head has no backup to that. So it is of particular concern, and I ask that Council support the motion to write to our state member, highlighting the issue and asking for their support to have it addressed. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Councillor Hayes?
Yeah, I'd just like to strengthen what Daniel said about Ben and his role in Evans Head and his knowledge of the system and how it works down there. But we've had a personal case ourselves at our own home not long ago, where a young child had a choking experience, a fitting experience, and it took 55 minutes to get an ambulance from Balna because the one in town was delivering someone to the other hospital. It was a non-urgent case at the time. So it does affect what happens down there. Yeah, I think it's something we should support, and I think Ben's factual stuff on what goes on is pretty well spot on. So, fully support it.
Any other speakers? I'd just like to say I think the notice of motion was well submitted. A resolution coming out of council to go to our local member, and further on down the line it will be from him. It's I think it's a good move, and hopefully we can get some results out of it. Any other speakers? Put that motion in. All those in favour? Welcome, Councillor Cornish. .1 on page 9, mayoral attendances. I'll move that.
Second.
Councillor Morrissey. Any questions or debate on that?
Yes, Mr Mayor. 10th of September, Governor-General Mr Linda Hurley discussion with the Mayor and General. Can you just give us an overview on discussion, please?
Yeah, the Governor-General and Mrs Hurley were, they ring around to various councils and gave us about 3 days notice, I think, 4 days notice, and said they'd like to ring up and have a bit of a chat. The main discussion was about bushfire recovery and how we were going after that and the floods, and then it turned to COVID and how it's affecting our community, and yeah, they were quite pleased to hear that we were very successful in a lot of grant money to come to our area, and Ratbill Hall was starting. Yeah, it was a good discussion, and they mentioned some of the issues we raised. They're around the area here, the rural industries are going very well, but the businesses are suffering, and there's mental health problems. They said that's more or less on the East Coast. And we also mentioned that the problem is shortage of housing, and they said, well, that's the same as they're getting wherever they ring all over Australia. So, yeah, it's pretty broad brush, those things. But it was a, what, half an hour, 40 minutes?
A good 45-minute chat.
So it was a good chat, and they know where we are, and hopefully one day they'll get back to Beef Week and have a look around the area and visit Ratbill again and go down to the coast, and yeah, so it was a good, pretty casual discussion, but I don't know if you want to say.
I don't think they'd, not that long ago, they'd actually taken a break in the northern rivers, doing some hiking, I think it was, up around, I think they're up around Nightcap or somewhere up there. So I think that came up in the context of some, the impacts of COVID on the Byron area, because they'd actually, stayed in that area recently. So they've got a really strong connection with the Northern Rivers, and it's always, it's a good casual chat to catch up with them, but they're really concerned about the impacts on our community. So it's good to have a chat, and they're obviously keen to see that Rapville Hall when it gets going. So looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Delegates' report says nil. Matters determined without debate. Councillors, has any councillor got any item?
16-4.
15-4? 16?
16.
16-4. Any other councillors? I've got 14-1. It needs to be called. I'll call 14.3 because I have a question on that. Any other councillors? Nope. So I believe I'm looking for a motion for 14.2, 14.4, 15.1, 16.1, 16.2, 16.3. Right? Somebody move that way, please.
Move that way.
Councillor Humphries.
Second.
Councillor Morrissey. I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Carried. Unanimous. First item that was called was 14.1 on page 11. And I'll move that. Can I get a seconder, please?
Yeah, second.
Councillor Hayes. Councillors, this is pretty straightforward. It's government legislation that this position has to be filled at this meeting, so I won't talk to it. Does anybody else would like to? Maybe we, as a recommendation, says we have open voting. Everyone okay with that? Any other speakers? I'll put that motion in. All those in favour? Carried. I'll now hand over the General Manager to be the returning officer, please. It states on page 12.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So, obviously election of Deputy Mayor for the duration of this term, which is not too long, but it needs to be done. At this stage, I've just received one nomination form from Councillor Morrissey. Is there any other nominations from the floor? No. So given that there is just the one nomination, I will declare Councillor Morrissey as the Deputy Mayor for the duration of this electoral term. And I'll say that carefully because you never know whether it might actually still happen on the 4th of December. So congratulations, Councillor Morrissey.
Congratulations. Councillors, next item on the agenda is page 16, 14.3, and I call that one, so I'll move that. Seconder, Councillor Morrissey. Councillors, I just believe this is a good, for what we've been through, it's a good, will be a good document and for our community. But my question, Mr General Manager, is on page 17, and it says that about second paragraph down, Council's recovery manager position is funded by Resilient New South Wales until 30 of June 22. The key performance indicators of the position will include actions that are outlined in the plan. Once adopted, the recovery manager will take the lead role in liaising with council staff, community, relevant stakeholders, and provide quarter progress reports to council. How will that liaising being carried out and communicated with our community?
I'll actually let Director Jones answer that one. It's in her patch.
Director Jones.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So our recovery manager, the action items that are in this plan that we're looking at this evening include things such as marketing plans for our towns and villages, a communications and media campaign to build resilience, and that also forms part of our disaster dashboard that we're going to launch, and to also manage the content on it. There are a number of recovery events that we do have planned, fingers crossed, COVID permitting. A number of them had to be rescheduled in the last 12 months because of COVID restrictions. So we're hoping that with the vaccination rates, we'll be able to have some of these events in the next 9 months or so, until the June 30 date next year. There's a number of grants that she is also administering and assisting the community in with regards to bushfire recovery and resilience funding, and working with the Chamber of Commerce to implement their emergency plans and preparedness. There's a number of brochures and communications that have been prepared, and hopefully, again, COVID permitting, there'll be some workshops. And we have partnered with the Red Cross. They have a Get Ready program, a resilience building recovery program. So again, that is online at the moment, but we do hope to have face-to-face sessions with the community. So that's what we hope to achieve in a nutshell in the next 9 months or so.
Thank you. I just asked that question because I think that's a really big part of the plan, to get it out there and be able to engage with our community and let them know what's happening. Because so many times you hear people say, I didn't know about that, but I think this will be good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I'll put that motion, and all those in favour? Carried. I believe we now skip to page 31, 16.4. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, if I could just ask a question prior to moving the recommendation, Mr Mayor.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor.
That's all right. Mr Mayor, Dr Gates sent us all an email this morning in relation to the use of council aerodromes, and raised a number of points in regards to that policy. I'm just wondering if we could have some comments from the General Manager as to those points, and if he feels they're fair, or if the... did you see the email? Mr General Manager should ask that first.
Yes, I have seen the email. Thanks. Yep.
Yes, I've just had some commentary on that before we discuss that.
I must say it's been a fairly hectic day. Haven't had much of a chance to turn our mind to the detail of it. So my suggestion would be to move the recommendation without that one. It's not an urgent policy matter that we need to have resolved here this evening. We can give those comments their, due thought, and bring that policy back to a future meeting of council. So I'd be happy to do that.
You pleased to alter your motion?
I never made a motion
Oh,
for that reason.
I thought we had a second.
So with that in mind, I'll move the motion, but removing item 4, the use of council aerodromes, please.
Thank you. Seconder.
Second.
Had your name written down too. Councillor Simpson, would you like to speak to that?
Oh, look, not much to say. Obviously, I'm not an expert in the use of council aerodromes, but there are some points made that perhaps need some consideration. So, as it's not urgent, it's probably worth pulling that out and just considering those to make sure that we get it right.
No comments on the other ones? Councillor Morrissey? Any other councillors? Want to write a reply? Put that motion then. All those in favour? Carried. Page 32. Item 17. Matters for information.
Can I speak to that, please?
You
Mr. Mayor?
yes? Yep. Oh, did I get a move? Did I get a move? No, I need a mover first. Would you like to move it? Seconder? Councillor Simpson. Councillor Lyons.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Since this press release went public re the proposed waste facility for Richmond Valley, I've been contacted by numerous residents, both locally and from neighbouring councils, who are expressing their concerns at the idea of having an industry such as this in our backyard. A common saying was, if it's not good enough for Sydney, why should we accept this industry into our neighbourhood? There is some concern at the increase in truck movements across the Northern Rivers, and particularly in the Richmond Valley casino road systems, the impacts this will have on our roads, and the safety aspects of locals and visitors navigating the roads with the extra trucks on board. This alternative form of waste disposal is not a solution that works in our favour in regard to climate change, as the huge amounts of carbon are emitted from these facilities. Globally, the move is away from this technology, and facilities are shutting down. In fact, the EU has recently removed all subsidies for this industry, and the US is apparently considering their options. Is this really an option for us to be considering, knowing this? Did you know that for every 4 tonnes of waste incinerated, 1 tonne of hazardous waste is left for council to dispose of, or the contractor of the facility? This waste is known as fly ash and is highly hazardous due to the burning of plastics in particular. The high incineration actually condenses the toxins found in plastic anyway. And so bearing this in mind, where would council plan to build a landfill site, especially for this waste to be taken to? I noted in a reply to a question asked by Liz Stopps at a council meeting on the 16th of April 2019 as to the disposal of fly ash, and concrete is one such option. But sadly, from my understanding, this will only spread the toxins found in the hazardous waste across various sites, as concrete, as we know, does break down over time. There are also questions being asked of just who the 12 councils originally involved in this project were, and which had decided to step away. Does council know the reasons as to why they did this? Another valid question is who is funding the project in the short term and once into the long term. Is council aware that Ipswich, just over the border, is also considering building a similar facility? And what are the potential impacts for us if they do? The Northern Rivers prides itself on its clean, green image, and this is potentially at risk of being lost due to the high levels of dioxins that are emitted. In fact, Japan leads the way as having the highest concentrations of dioxins in its air. Dioxins are known to be absorbed into the fats of all living creatures, including people and livestock. Our beef industry and our status as the beef capital could possibly be at risk if we start exporting beef and tests show this chemical is actually in our beef. Does council know of the contracts that are usually binding for 20 to 30 years on average? What will council do if they fail to meet the designated quota and are subsequently fined? This is a risk and needs to be considered carefully before any agreement is signed. The community also feels they have been left out of the conversation. They feel no community consultation has been done, and there is a concern that it might be a done deal due to our designation as a job precinct. Community understanding, community involvement at a grassroots level is necessary, especially as it will be ratepayers' money that I presume will help maintain this facility. The selling points of new jobs is not quite valid. Yes, in the building phase, but once these facilities are established, they are usually run by computers. This was pointed out to me by a concerned resident on one of my many calls. The concerns of our community match my concerns. You will possibly remember I have raised concern at this industry and my preference for council to be leading the way forward in working towards zero waste, making a real commitment to keeping our environment safe from these types of industries, not only for a community, planet level, but also on the very basis of our environmental charter, with particular reference to the first point, efficient use of water, energy, and other resources, minimising waste and emissions where practical, and encouraging reuse /or recycling of waste. I have a quote from the Zero Waste International Alliance. Zero waste is a goal that is both pragmatic and visionary, to guide people to emulate sustainable natural cycles, where all discarded materials are resources for others to use. Zero waste means designing and managing products and processes to reduce the volume and toxicity of waste and materials, conserve and recover all resources, not to burn or bury them. Implementing zero waste will eliminate all discharges to land, water or air that may be a threat to planetary, human, animal or plant health." End quote. Burning our waste will discourage recycling, reusing, upcycling. And instead of working towards a circular economy, we will stay stuck in one that keeps taking resources to build new, and the cycle will continue until either we decide to stop or the resources run out. In closing, I feel Council needs to explore alternative waste solutions that will not be of such a concern and place our town at a possible risk of airborne pollutants that are real and have a real potential to cause more harm than good to our environment and our community and our clean, green image that draws businesses and tourists to our region. I would also like to ask Council to consider inviting representatives from the National Toxic Network to attend a Council information session, so to give us all an insight into this waste to energy business. That is also important to know, I feel, so that we can all make an informed decision knowing the potential risks we may be exposed to, and I am more than happy to set up such a meeting. For these reasons, and on behalf of the community, I feel I can't vote for the recommendation at this stage until we have further information. We have heard from experts in regard to the possible negative impacts of this industry. Thank you.
Any other councillors want to speak on item 17? Hmm? Yep. Any item in 17? Yep. I'd just like to say that on 17.2, it's pleasing to see that work's commenced on that project. Coronation Park was getting, the facilities there were getting overdue for an upgrade, and I'm looking forward to that becoming available for our community, and the Memorial Walk. As you know, the tender was a little bit over, but it looks like we've got back under that and we're underway, and like a lot of other projects in our council area, it's great to see them happening. Any other councillors?
Just a comment, Mr Mayor, with 17.3, I'd like to thank Council. Councillors ask that councillors and the community is kept up to date on the Norton's Gap Road landslip. This is hugely important to the community and is infecting a large number of our communities. So thank you, and I hope that we will continue to just keep pushing the information out there so they know exactly what's going on. It's really complicated and difficult, isn't it? Yeah, thank you.
And council is aware that it's a very big inconvenience to that part of our area, but it's one of those things we can't move in while there's still movement there, and there's a lot of design work, and we have to work with government departments, and yeah, unfortunately we'd all like to go out and just fix it within a couple of months, but it just can't occur. Any other councillors?
Can I just go back to 17.1?
Yep.
Is council interested in having someone from National Toxic Network come and speak to us so we can see the other side to the business?
Look, I just really think that we're a long, long way off of even talking to anyone about it happening. I think that will come around public consultation time, and we understand more what can occur and what can't occur, and the EPA guidelines and all those type of things. So I just think until that occurs, we're better off waiting until that consultation works with our community. But you could always move a notice of motion at the next council meeting. That's up to you. But just at present, I think it's a long, long way off. We're talking years away. So, yeah.
understand that, but I think in something that's as serious as this, and knowing that other facilities around the country, around the world, are being, shut down because of the complications they're finding, plus the expenses, that maybe having something like that sooner than later, so that we've got a bit more of a fuller picture, taking that to the other councils that are still interested in this. And it is the other council, people from the other councils that have been contacting me, not just local people. So that's why I've thrown that in there as an offer, because it's something that we, it's quite a serious thing. There is a lot of concern, and maybe that's one way of showing that we are proactive, because we're looking at seeing, council did go to Japan, they did have that input from the other side, so it would be nice to be able to show the community that we are open to taking information and getting input from the other side of the equation.
That's what I said, that you've got that right to move a notice of motion at the next council meeting. There are also a lot of countries that are building them too. So, yep.
Oh, just to make a comment that I support the Mayor's comments on this. I'd prefer, open to learning, listening, reading, whatever, on any topic. But I'd prefer to workshop this with our Richmond Valley Council for a few information sessions to start with as well. It's extremely important at this early stage to get the facts, the correct facts, out into the community. A little bit that I've seen is just so false that we need an opportunity, Richmond Valley Council needs an opportunity to go over this, go right through it, and put the information that we believe our community needs to hear. I mean, all I can read here is there's future solutions to replace less environmentally sound energy resources such as coal-fired power stations and avoid methane emissions from landfill. We've spent hours in dire desperation trying to think of how we would manage our waste disposal in this council term. This could be a solution. Open to it, Jill, Councillor Lyons, but certainly not yet. I personally am not open to it until we as a council sit down and start putting out the facts to our community and then see what's coming in from the community.
Can I make a comment? I listened to Jill there, and with the byproduct that comes out of these waste disposal, what do you call them? Like the setup. The fly ash is reused. It's a reusable product, and she mentioned it's used in concrete, but concrete is crushed at a later date, tested and reused anyway, so it never ends up back in landfill. So the fly ash just goes on and on and on. It doesn't. That's just my opinion. But so that point, needs some discussion too, I think.
Thanks, Councillor Hayes. Overseas studies have found that the concrete, once it's been, it's basically being contaminated with the fly ash, that it can't be reused, so it ends up in some form of land waste or refill sort of thing. The offer to organise a presentation would not be at a council forum, it would be more at an information session, so that we as a council could learn before taking it out to the community, so we've sort of got answers to both sides of the questions.
That's what I said, but it won't be mostly going to the community for how long, Mr. General Manager?
Look, the next step, and I think just a couple of points, probably no council has agreed to this facility in our area. The work that we've been doing as a group of councils is looking at alternate waste treatment solutions for all of the waste streams. So I think that's an important point to make, because I know people are making claims, and there's a lot of different views out there. Like the 25%, my understanding of energy from waste facilities is that the residual after the process is around 10%. So I think what this conversation to me highlights, which is what I think I said in response to one of Ms. Stopp's questions, was that we've certainly identified the need for a evidence-based, factual, community information series of, whether it be fact sheets, seminars, whatever it be. But it needs to be balanced and evidence-based, and that's why I also mentioned the chief scientist. The chief scientist has specifically looked at energy from waste. There's reports on that. So I think that's what we need to focus on. And I think as Councillor Humphries, so let's get that information together. We'll also work with Regional New South Wales as to whether there's something that the government can support us with around a community information campaign. So I think it's important that it comes out in a in a balanced, factual. Here's the evidence, because I think one of the you talk, Councillor Lyons, you've mentioned that facilities are closing. I don't know which facilities you're talking about, but these facilities do close, usually about 20 years after they're built, because they're built on a 20-year basis. So that may be why they're closed. So it sort of depends on who you listen to as to. Obviously, you can tell a story to an end, whatever that end is that you want, and I think that's where we need to come back to. Let's get the facts, get them out on the table, get them into the community. It's early days. As I say, this government announcement has said that it can happen in the Richmond Valley, but there's a lot to work through before we're in a position that it will commence being built. There's a long planning pathway. We've got to have investors that actually make a decision that it stacks up here. The volumes of residual waste, may not be enough for one of these facilities to be commercially viable. And that's another point, mate. This is a commercial proposition. This is not a facility that council is in, or any council's in a position to build on their own. So there's plenty of water to go under the bridge, and I think we just need to move forward, with an open mind, but let's get the facts and evidence on the table.
I'll just follow up on that about them closing. We actually witnessed that when we were in Japan. One had closed and the other one was just about to be commissioned right next to it, because they have a life cycle. So they're closing them, correct, but they're also reopening them. Yeah. Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, look, I think it's important to make the point that I think we're getting a little bit too focused on energy from waste. Our role is to investigate all of the alternate solutions. Energy from waste is one of those alternatives. It's not the be-all and end-all, and it's not to replace things like a circular economy and zero waste. Of course we should be heading towards that. This is to deal with waste that we don't have another way of dealing with. And it is one option that needs to be investigated. No decisions have been made about it. And yes, we need to look at all the information, and yes, there's a lot of work that has to be done. But I think we're getting a little bit too focused on it. It is one option. We need to continue to look at all of the alternate options for waste, because waste is a huge, huge issue for us, and probably one of the biggest issues for us moving forward. And just digging holes and putting it in the ground is not a great solution either. So, yeah, thank you.
And I think you've made a good point there. People are thinking that every garbage bin that's emptied into a truck is going to go into this. The recycling will still occur. The green waste will still occur. This is only red bin waste.
I think most of the community that have raised those concerns with me are aware that it's the red waste, and it's the burning of plastics is a highly controversial sort of thing. And the facilities of this sort of that are shutting are in the Northern Hemisphere and are going under the advice of the EU, dropping their subsidies and things. So,
Right, any other items on 17?
Mr. Mayor, just a mention of 17.6, correspondence. Just in relation to noting that's all. Through a notice of motion of mine about the ANZ van closure. Just nothing to say, just just noting it.
Any other items?
Through Mr. Mayor, I don't want to say too much because I'm might need to. Yeah. All
right, there's no other speakers. I'll put that motion and all those in favour. Carried. Unanimous. Item 18. Questions on notice? Nil. Item 19, questions for the next meeting in writing. Mr General Manager, have you received any questions?
I have just received questions from Councillor Hayes, which I'm happy to answer, if that's, you're happy with that?
Yeah, that's fine. Do you want me to read them out, or are you going to?
Yeah, it'd be better
Yeah,
if
you
did.
read them out. Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
better that way, and I'll answer them as you go.
Okay. First one, I've got, when will council change the speed limit signs on Air Force Beach to a blanket maximum speed of 20 kilometres an hour as per resolution 160-221-18 from the council meeting on the 16th of February 21?
Mr General Manager.
Yeah, look, we've dropped the ball on that one. Our staff have, obviously from when you raised this with me, are onto it. So Paul Cowles, our team leader, our rangers, is looking at it. We'll identify where the signs need to go and we'll get those implemented. So I'd envisage that, subject to getting the right supply of signs, which can be a challenge getting things at the moment, I'd like to be in a position to have that done, within the next month.
Thank you.
Question 2.
Number 2 is there was an allocated budget of $25,000 for fencing works associated with the off-leash dog areas was to be used towards additional dog-friendly facilities. It says at the time the report at the September meeting in 2020, $10,250 of that money was estimated for signage upgrades, dog drinking fountain and dog dropping bag dispensers. It was suggested that the most southern access to Air Force Beach could be upgraded at the point where it becomes covered with water during rain events and for a prolonged time after these events. Is this still the case?
Yeah, so what happened with the funds, so any of the surplus funds were actually, through a monthly budget adjustment, was put across to the Evanshead Cemetery improvements. So, the stonework that's been done there. So it was moved into, so we were able to get that project fully funded in the last financial year. So that's where the money went, but we will get some quotes because I think that path's certainly well utilised and certainly does have a low spot. So we're going to get some quotes and we'll see if we can find a way to get that funded in this financial year and get on with it. So we'll keep you informed once we get some quotes and around a time frame.
Question 3.
Thank you. Question 3. Can council provide an update on the Indigenous street signage notice of motion that was brought to the council meeting in September 2019? Members of the public have inquired as to why 2 years have passed and nothing is in place.
So what we've done there is, I suppose firstly, we've been active on this and we've been looking to engage with obviously the relevant Indigenous groups, of which we've got a few that we need to deal with in looking at this signage. We've actually looked at refreshing our existing town entry signage. So we do have some draft designs. You may remember we did submit an application under the Stronger Country Communities program to fund this. So we expect announcements on that funding to be in November. So if we are successful with that, as I say, we have some draft designs, so we'll be able to talk with each of the communities in each of the towns. We've got some draft designs, so we can move forward quite quickly with that. So the aim is that the existing town entry signs, of which you can see that the wraps on those are fading in quite a few cases, and looking at some fresh designs to re-wrap them basically with our Discover Richmond Valley tourism branding. So what I'll do is get an info session briefing for you for October, so you can actually have a look at the preliminary designs and give us any feedback on them. So announcement of funding, hopefully November, so we can get on with it straight after that if we're successful. Otherwise, we need to find 50 grand somewhere else in our budget.
Thank you.
Page 56, matter referred to closed council. Could I get a motion, please?
Move that way.
Second.
Mr General Manager, is there any written representation regarding the meeting going into closed council?
No, nothing received.
We have no gallery, so does any councillors want to Now? Director Zeller, could you read the resolution of council, please?
Yes, Mr Mayor. In the item 20.1, tender VP 259162, detailed design and construct casino showground precinct. Recommend that Council 1 declines all submissions received for tender VP 259162, detailed design and construct casino showground precinct, due to all submissions being either higher than the budget allocated for the works, not meeting project scope, or were non-conforming. 2, determines not to call fresh tenders, as this is the second tender process for this project and the impacts of COVID-19 restrictions have impacted on the number of responses to this tender, the price submitted and the ability to deliver in a timely manner. 3, apply clause 178(3)(e) of the Local Government General Regulation 2005 to authorise the General Manager to enter into direct negotiations with suitably qualified contractors. This may include contractors who did not tender, with a view to obtaining delivery of the priorities within the project scope and the available budget, and to finalise the terms of the contract or agreement, including affixing the seal of council where necessary. 4, note that the outcomes of the negotiations will be reported to council for information at a future meeting. In the item 20.2, Casino Industries Activation Power Infrastructure Tender, recommend that Council 1 writes to the Minister for Local Government seeking the Minister's consent under clause 393B(2) of the Local Government General Regulation 2021 for Council to approve the tender recommendation of the Richmond Valley Council Assessment Panel and General Manager for the Casinos Industry Activation Power Upgrade Project if A, to meet project delivery timeframes, it is required to be made during the 2021 local government election caretaker period, and B, the tendered price provides best value for money, is within the approved budget and results in an acceptable delivery timeframe.
Right. Done? Nothing else? Thank you to all those who joined us.
I finished on the wrong mark.
I was waiting for C.
Just in closing, I'd like to thank everyone who's taken the time to join us tonight online, and to staff and councillors, and everyone take care and keep safe. That closes the meeting. Thank you.